Greetings, star beings and earth walkers. Just sharing a little energy clearing with you. So I'm here talking about my experience with the global light warrior work that I participated in and shared, and being a conduit in with you. So I'm going to begin. I want to keep this short. Studies show people like short videos. I'll do my best. So what happened is it began with me stepping out of my body. I called in all the directions. I followed the instructions that I shared with everybody. I hope you watch the videos first to support yourself and being aligned with the intentions that I brought. So I stepped out and the first thing I did was look at Earth, and it seemed very like there was black all around it. This black was symbolic of the work that was about to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that there was literal black. I'll discuss that a little bit more further in the moment. So, but the first thing I did was I looked for the star grid pattern, because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't see it. I hope other people who join me can see it. So I stepped into it and I started breathing with it. And I started becoming my own vacuum in my connection with the kingdom of light. And I started breathing with it, and it started sparkling and igniting and lighting everywhere. I started seeing the people who were connected with the star grid with intention, and people who were meant to be connected with the star grid, who maybe weren't aware in this reality format that this was happening, but on a higher level they were ready. I stepped into that, and then what I did, the first thing I did was I just wanted to make sure that everybody was tapped into the pillar of light creation that you do in yourself. So the instructions were to breathe into your center, connect your crown with the kingdom of light, connect your feet or your bottom energy to the middle earth crystal core. One of the things that has occurred in the last week is I've participated with many other crystal sun priestesses from the other realms. It's the 7th dimension, and what we have done, and these incredible operatic sounds we shared in, and all these crystal light and light codes were coming out. What happened is we were directing this to the sun, and the sun was directing it back to us, the middle earth sun, the crystal sun, and it started vortexing in such an extreme way, and it elevated itself to the 12th dimension. So what it's doing is it's going between the 12th dimension and the 7th dimension and vortexing. This vortex is creating a vacuum. This vacuum is making that everything is constantly being transmuted. All you need to do is kind of tap into it as a tree. Follow the lead of nature and the plant kingdom. They are there with Earth. So this is what I wanted to ensure, that people were tapped into that. So I went around, I followed the star pattern. I was guided to go into the center of the star patterns, and in those star patterns I was able to assess beings on different points. I was assessing them from multiple levels. So you have the 144 level, which are the higher crowning connection, to the 144,000, and then it goes down and down and down. And these numbers don't mean down as in a degradation, just mean as in your position in the grand template of the divine template of all creation. So I ensured that, I supported that, and some people were doing it, it was like spark, spark, spark. So I just supported that in the best way that I could. I had a lot of support. I had the divine Sophia Christo, who you see a portrait of her behind me, as well as Christ Micheal, and as well as the Royal Creationism Council of all federations. So these are responsible for DNA structure, crystalline structure, codes from creationism, essentially, and they are responsible for the harmony of that. They have the wisdom that we're channeling in terms of transcending our cells and our DNA into a higher evolution. So I had their full support this entire time. I went there first to confirm it, because as Ariane, just this person in front of you, I know nothing. I I do nothing. This is me emptying myself and trusting the support of the benevolent beings that I have been very blessed to have a part of my life and your life. So once that happened, we then all tapped into, from here, we pulled into our hearts. I did this all with breathing. And we tapped into that pillar. And then the star grid was now fluttering with more connective light. It was getting brighter and brighter and brighter. So I said, okay, Creator, what's next? So I went up to my connection. I went through my crown chakra to Prime Creator and Mother Creator, Father Creator, and I brought down light codes, and he gifted those to me to bring forward. They were not mine to bring. I was just a bridge. And what happened is all the ones that were activated to this, the dimensions that I already mentioned, these light codes started coming in. Now, this part, I'm going to explain something to you, and this is very important because through this process, we were gifted globally a very powerful gift each. And I'm going to explain this to you right now, what I witnessed. And I would love insight into this as well, just to deepen that connection with this gift. So these light codes and light pillars started coming down into everybody's bodies, and something started dripping out of everybody's bodies that I was witnessing. And I was witnessing things as a web, and each point of the web, I was having fractals of information. I was seeing the patterns. So it was dripping. It looked like liquefied aluminum or mercury, and I actually heard the word aluminum multiple times. It was coming out of the feet, it was coming out of people's bodies, and I knew this was important. And I was like, Creator, what is this? And I was explained that what this was a lot of the toxins and metals that are in our body are also connected to a disharmonized fear. So I was also explained, slow down on fear being the enemy. It is not the enemy. Fear is a necessary part of being human. It is just it is imbalanced at this time. So that's what this molten stuff was dripping out of everybody. Like it was like liquid metal. And I was breathing, using breath work and my energy with the earth, with all of you, with these codes, with this mercury, and it was just vacuuming. This vacuum effect that we were already tapped into was sucking and pulling this with your breath, with your connection, with my breath, with my connection, and the unity of it all. And I was like, it was more and more was coming out. So I was like, what do you do with this? It was kind of like jelly, floating wet mercury jelly. And so I brought it all together, and with the guidance of Creator. Remember, I'm an empty vessel, so when I say I don't mean like a literal I mean my one in the universe. So where was I? Yes. Okay, this was super intense. This was the most challenging light work I have ever done. It was so physical for me. Now, what had happened next was, yes, I was like, Creator, what do I do? And so he said, form it into a ball. So I went into kind of like the center top of the earth, I guess the Antarctic, the North Pole. And I began pulling everything into a center, into a ball form. It was still very liquidy and not touching. And I'm like, wow, this stuff is dangerous. What am I going to do with this? This is dangerous. This is toxic. This is a big responsibility. Holy cow, I need help. And so I then from there was guided again, and I brought this forward into the astral, kind of like away from Earth. By this point, I was kind of guided to know that that process was completed. So I guided it out there, and this was really cool. So there's like the strings in the mesh of the universe. It's quantum string theory and quantum physics, and different physics have proven this, and it's waves and strings connected. My fingertips became a part of the strings in this mesh, and we were forming around this like jelly, not solid liquid metal, and compressing it. I became surrounded with several beings. I now know that they were different like masters, archangels, different like monk warriors, very powerful, knowledgeable, cosmic wizards, but who do not use violence at all. That's the monk part. They're too evolved almost. So they were surrounding me, and so that was that support, and I was compressing it. And they were telling me, again, this is not about ridding humans of fear. Fear is normal. It's just about finding wisdom through that fear. That is the point of this. And to release these toxins, which become a magnet for more toxins, more fear. So compress into this sphere. And then they started referring to it. It was like a solid, polished sphere. I have these medicine balls. It looked like this, but it was about this big in comparison to my hands. I wish I had something. If anybody has anything like this and they want to trade for a service with me, please call me. Let's hook it up. Let's do it. So it looked like this. Can you imagine that? So this is very important. Let that go right into your pineal. Okay, and I'll continue telling you. So this sphere became fear at an ascended level. It became what is called an obelisk. Now, obelisks are usually towers. A dear friend of mine has really encouraged me to research this. And these are, I haven't yet. It's in my surroundings. But I am attuned to something here. And so I was like, but usually they're towers. And they're like, well, this is a quantum obelisk, which is spherical or round. Anything in creationism is round or spherical or circular. So they explained to me to bring this down to earth, and each of the people, they were supporting it and I was supporting it. This was a team thing. And it was so weird. I saw like all of the spheres appearing on my fingers, like miniature ones around each finger. And then I would just go and boop, 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 all around earth. And they were in front of everybody. They were dark in front of everybody. They weren't doing anything. And I'm like, okay, well, how do we let them activate? And they're like, tell them telepathically. So I did. I sent out this information, and they funneled information through me for my knowledge and to spread around to you at the same time. So you already have this information. So basically this sphere, you conjure this up, this tool, you acknowledge it, acknowledge this sphere. This is an obelisk. I might be mispronouncing it, an obelisk from a quantum reality, and this is an ascended version of fear. This has been removed from Earth, and now it's being put back. This is now fear and wisdom, fear and knowledge, fear and solution, okay? Fear and self-acceptance. And so, and inside, deep inside, there's a small but bright blue light. There's light codes in this light. I believe this is the Akashic record of the sphere. Okay, I just got a confirmation from a guide, if anybody else heard that it is in fact the Akashic record of the sphere. So we activated that into each other, kind of like this star grid pattern through our minds, okay, into our cerebral knowing, into our brain knowing, into our nervous system knowing, into our universal knowing, which is in our heart centers, and they started brightening up. Then what I saw from here is that whole grid work as a blanket of a love and light vacuum was then transmuting this information into our individual grid work math patterns that we're connected to. It's like we come from a flower of life and we create a flower of life. And that's kind of the transcendence of the layers of the template. So the next flower of life and the next and next and next and next, and just keeps expanding in that numerical value, which is back to the 144 or 144, 144,000 and on and on and on. It transcends through a flower of life. I have some teachings about that I'll share. So this sphere is now in everybody's field all around Earth. And what was shown to me is that we can call upon this sphere at any point to remove mercury, aluminum, or chemical sprays, toxins from vaccines, toxins that are being sprayed into the air, toxins and chemicals that are hidden in our foods and in our environment. These spheres will literally, like a magnet, suck them out and transmute them. Just trust. I was also guided to put this in my bathtub. So I brought this etheric sphere and put it in my bathtub, and it started doing some magical work on me. I still have some mercury fillings, of course. And so it was like really working a lot of my mouth and working through that for me. And it was interesting how these toxins in our body were directly linked with over-inflamed fear, vibration, and emotion. Okay, so we all have that sphere. Please remember that. Please note that. This is what it looks like. Tap into it. You can. You are a light worker. You are a warrior of light. I know this resonates. I don't think this video is going to be 20 minutes. I'm going to continue on from here. There's a lot to share that I witnessed and experienced that I think is very important. Okay. I wrote some notes. So sorry, just give me a second here. Okay, no light. Oh, okay. So after this sphere happened, I'm like, Creator, what's next? So I was brought kind of like, again, this isn't a knowing state. It's not like somebody's holding my hand. I just become something that I know, and it just happens. There's no pre-thought. It just happens. And that's what I mean by knowing. So I was stepped out, outside of the grid, and I tapped into the center of one particular star in the center of Earth. And from here, I started chanting light codes. These were light codes, so fast, so intense, so high vibration that my mouth and my tongue could barely keep up. It was insane. Again, most powerful light work I've ever done. My whole body started heating up and cooling down and heating up, and it was continuing with this expansion breath. So these light codes, what they did was that now we're already pillared to the kingdom of light. What they did is they activated everybody's RNA. So we have our knowledge of our Earth ancestral DNA and our experience here on Earth, and it brought down all our highest wisdom to team with that as a bridge, right? These light codes were about that bridge. And what started witnessing from this point was gold and light and white light and yellow light kind of flickering and swimming and snaking around everybody, expanding these heads, expanding these bodies. Everybody started glowing in these like golden white cosmic eggs. And then I started witnessing. So I did the light codes, and now I'm just a witness. I'm standing back and I'm breathing with everybody and just being present in compassion and holding the space that I'm divine to hold. And I started witnessing people stepping into, like, I want to use the word superpowers. So everybody who's awakened on Earth has a very particular skill. The things you are attuned in your knowledge, whether it's this reality or in a cosmic reality or an etheric reality, whatever reality that you're playing with and bringing into this present now, is exactly what you're meant to do. So what this was in particular were people who were hybridizing and stepping up into the higher dimensions, and they were actually hybridizing with their